In the year 2077, the virtual game Apocalypse became a grim reality, plunging the world into chaos as its order collapsed. The once thriving civilization descended into hellish turmoil. Yet, amidst the devastation, a glimmer of hope emerged. Humans began awakening supernatural abilities tied to their characters in the virtual game. Gamers, once ordinary, now ascended as the new gods of this shattered world. Among them was Ye Xiao, a wealthy playboy and philanthropist. Unlike others who sought power or dominance, Ye Xiao cared little for the world. His sole concern was ensuring the survival of the woman he loved in this chaotic new reality. He spared no expense, pouring his vast fortune into boosting her level, hiring experts to protect her, and even acquiring divine artifacts to strengthen her. His devotion was boundless, and through his efforts, Yanran rose to become a god-tier powerhouse in Dragon Country. However, Yanran's meteoric rise did not go unnoticed. Envy spread like wildfire as people grew jealous of her power, her countless gifts, and most of all, the unwavering devotion of a man willing to sacrifice everything for her. When the day of their long-awaited wedding finally arrived, Yanran made a simple request, an intimate ceremony with just the two of them. Ye Xiao agreed wholeheartedly, overjoyed at the thought of their union. But as he held her in his arms, basking in what he believed was their love, her true intentions were revealed. In a swift, merciless strike, she plunged her hand into his chest, tearing out his heart with her bare hands. Yanran had never cherished his gifts or his love. To her, his generosity was an insult, a constant reminder that others viewed her as someone who relied solely on a man's wealth, rather than her own strength. She despised the way he showered her with treasures, convinced that everything she had achieved was the result of her own hard work. The only person she believed truly understood her struggles was Zhou Hong, her true love. Now that Ye Xiao was gone, she and Hong would take everything that had once belonged to him. It was a pathetic end for Ye Xiao, betrayed by the one he loved most. His kindness seen as nothing more than an unbearable burden. He had never expected such a cruel misunderstanding to lead to his demise. Yet, among all the treasures he had gifted Yanran, Ye Xiao had kept one final trump card for himself. Fueled by his unwillingness to die and his insatiable thirst for revenge, he awakened this hidden power. In that moment, he succeeded in turning back time, returning to a period when he was still courting the ungrateful Yanran. In his hand, he held a card loaded with 200,000 Wen, her monthly allowance. But after everything that had happened, the illusion he once held of her had completely shattered. The rose-colored image he had admired was gone, replaced by the bitter truth. He finally saw her for what she truly was, a condescending manipulator. Her words, once sweet, now dripped with disdain, belittling him as if she were any better. The way she looked at him, as if he were some desperate fool seeking her approval, disgusted him. It was clear now she had never cared about him. She had only ever been interested in his money. Yet, instead of outright rejecting him, she had strung him along, making it seem as though staying with him was an act of generosity on her part, as if she were doing him some grand favor. She acted as though she wasn't after his wealth, all so that others wouldn't see her for what she truly was. A gold-digging, egotistical psycho. Strangely enough, Ye Xiao no longer felt anger. There was no hatred, no resentment, just indifference. He had bigger things to focus on now. He had reincarnated exactly 1 week before the virtual apocalypse began. He had no time to waste on someone like Yanran, so he ended things right then and there. If she was so adamant about not taking his money, then fine. She wouldn't get a single cent from him anymore. This, of course, took her by surprise. But just like before, her delusional mind twisted the situation. She thought this was some kind of act, that he was merely playing hard to get. And just like that, she suddenly changed her mind, reaching out to accept the debit card she had initially rejected. But it was too late for her. Ye Xiao had already moved on. He refused her and told her to leave. Naturally, this made Yanran furious. Instead of backing down, she lashed out, convinced that he was bluffing. But this time, Ye Xiao wasn't having any of it. He decided to retaliate. Since she clearly didn't need anything from him, she didn't need the expensive shoes he had bought for her either. He grabbed the shoes off her feet and tossed them straight into the trash. This act truly set her off. She began ranting, spouting threats and swearing that he would regret this, that he would never see her again. But her outburst only made Ye Xiao smirk. To him, never laying eyes on her again would be a blessing. He had far more important things to deal with than wasting his time on her. The virtual apocalypse beta test was set to begin in 1 week, and during the first 10 minutes, the recharge system would briefly activate. That window of time was crucial, and he needed to prepare well. With this in mind, Ye Xiao called Lin and immediately attempted to sell all his shares for 20 billion yuan at once. Needless to say, this left her completely stunned. She had been itching to buy them for so long, knowing that owning them would mean Ye Xiao was essentially handing the Ye Corporation over to her. Naturally, the thought delighted her, but Ye Xiao couldn't care less about her excitement. He only wanted the money as fast as possible. He needed to gather enough funds before the test began, because in this life, he was going to climb the throne alone and rule the world on his own terms. A week passed, and the Apocalypse game finally opened for beta testers. The window would only last for 3 days before the public version launched. Without wasting a moment, Ye Xiao logged in immediately, heading straight to the character creation screen to pick his class. In his previous life, he remembered a guild that had been completely annihilated by a god-tier beast Tamer leading a dark abyss dragon. Pulling off such a feat alone was nothing short of insane, proving that this was easily one of the most overpowered classes in the game. Now, with an unlimited budget at his disposal, surpassing that legendary Tamer from his past life would be a walk in the park. Without hesitation, he chose to become a Tamer. After fully integrating his body with the class, the most crucial moment arrived. The recharge system he had been waiting for. The option to top up had finally appeared. He wasn't sure why, but it was only available for 10 minutes. Once that time was up, no one would be able to top up again. Given that this game would merge with reality, Ye Xiao went all in, purchasing a staggering 20 billion gold. It was the ultimate investment, and in just 3 days, the value of those coins would multiply tenfold. But just as he completed the transaction, something unexpected happened. A notification popped up, informing him that he had unlocked a unique hidden profession reward. As the first player to recharge over 1 billion, the system had granted him a hidden subclass, the Deity of Wealth. The moment the class was activated, a frog materialized out of thin air and greeted him. At first, Ye Xiao assumed it was some kind of low-level monster there to fight him. But the frog quickly corrected him, taking offense at the mere suggestion. It introduced itself as Ebisu, Ye Xiao's personal wealth mentor, and the 709th god of wealth under training. Xiao found the entire situation too good to be true, which made him deeply skeptical. He was convinced that the toad was nothing more than a scam artist. However, the toad, determined to prove its credibility, decided to demonstrate its worth. It activated Xiao's innate talent, revealing the absurdly overpowered nature of the hidden class he had unlocked. First, all the gold coins Xiao carried would increase by 1% daily. Second, he would no longer lose any gold or items upon death. Third, he now possessed immense luck. Fourth, he gained a +150 boost to charm. Lastly, and most ridiculously, for every 1,000,000 gold he spent, he would gain 1 random attribute point, up to 100 points per day. With this revelation, Xiao immediately understood why this class was hidden, and why the toad was, in fact, the real deal. If the innate abilities were accurate, then with his current wealth, he would be earning 22 million gold per day. That also meant he would gain 22 free attribute points daily. This was completely game-breaking. Without hesitation, Xiao picked up the toad and carried it like a toddler, thrilled by the absurd advantage he had just gained. Naturally, the toad, Ebisu, didn't appreciate being manhandled like a child, but Xiao couldn't care less at this point. He had just hit the jackpot, and it was only natural for him to be excited. Eager to test out his new perks, Xiao quickly set off. In an instant, he was transported to the Flower Plains, a field just outside the city. Since the server had just opened, not many players were around. It seemed most were still creating their characters' typical gamer behavior. This was the perfect opportunity for Xiao to level up quickly. However, hunting wasn't an option just yet. He knew better than anyone that starting as a beast tamer was far more difficult than other classes in the early stages. Taming powerful beasts wasn't even an option, and to make things worse, beast tamers didn't start with a weapon. Still, the class had incredible potential, making the early struggle worth it. If he wanted to grow quickly, he needed a solid strategy to overcome these disadvantages. With that in mind, Xiao decided to head to the nearest village to prepare. But before he could take a single step, his lone presence in the open field attracted some very unwelcome attention. Elite monsters, already at level 5, had locked onto him. With no way to fight back, running was his only option. He and the toad bolted as fast as they could, and after a frantic sprint, they finally made it to the novice village. Unfortunately, being a beast tamer made Xiao stand out, and not in a good way. Everyone knew how weak the class was, so it didn't take long for ridicule to follow. To make matters worse, he had a toad sitting on his shoulder, a weak beast with no combat abilities. People burst out laughing right in his face, but Xiao barely paid them any attention and simply continued on his way. During all of this, the toad suggested that Xiao buy some eggs being sold in the city. However, Xiao wasn't interested. He had a much better idea. There was no way he was settling for an ordinary beast as his first pet. Instead, he had his sights set on a hidden dungeon where a god-level beast egg lay inside a dragon's lair. Unsurprisingly, obtaining something like that wouldn't be easy. First, Xiao made a detour to the Supreme Hall, which immediately startled the Toad. Ebisu was convinced Xiao had lost his mind, as only level 100 players and above could hire guards there. But Xiao knew the truth. There was a hidden way for a level 1 like him to enter. He pressed forward, climbing the massive staircase. As expected, the moment he reached the entrance, a level 80 Grand Archmage stood guard, halting him on the spot. The mage informed him that only those with a city lord's recommendation could enter, something Xiao definitely didn't have. However, what Xiao did have was something far more valuable. At first, the Archmage thought the newbie was bluffing, but when Xiao pulled out a massive stack of gold coins, the mage's stern expression melted into a grin. Without a second thought, he bowed deeply and immediately granted Xiao access, not just to the premises, but straight to the VIP room upstairs. Money really did work wonders, even in a world like this. Even the Toad couldn't believe what had just happened. In all his years of being a mentor, he had never once expected this to be possible. Turns out, if you had enough money, even a high-level NPC could be bribed into giving you exactly what you wanted. A little while later, they arrived at the VIP room, where high-level guardian golems could be hired, ranging from level 80 to 100. The Supreme Hall truly lived up to its name. The Toad couldn't help but think that if Xiao hired one of these, he could easily dominate the novice village. But to his surprise, Xiao wasn't even remotely interested in such low-level golems. If he wanted to conquer a dragon's lair, he needed something far more powerful. As if on cue, an overseer appeared just in time. Much like the Archmage at the entrance, the moment he laid eyes on Xiao, he was visibly stunned. A low-level player standing in the Supreme Hall was shocking enough. But what truly left him speechless was the fact that this newbie was actually trying to hire a divine-level golem. Even among the elite, divine-level golems were incredibly rare. So rare that the overseer openly questioned how one could even be available for hire in the first place. Besides, just looking at Xiao's level, hiring a level 80 guardian would already be overkill. There was no way he could afford a divine-level golem at least. That's what the overseer thought. That was until Xiao casually claimed he'd pay 1 billion gold per day. For a moment, the overseer stood frozen. The sheer absurdity of the offer took a moment to sink in. But once it did, he quickly turned away, trying and failing to hide his excitement. While they couldn't get him a divine-level golem, the overseer just so happened to know of a divine-level spellcaster who might be able to help instead. The mere mention of this caught the Toad completely off guard. Spellcasters were a hidden class, incredibly rare and ridiculously powerful. Unlike golems, which specialized in brute force, spellcasters were versatile, excelling in offense, defense, and protection. Hiring one would be an insanely good move, but the overseer wasn't stupid. Before summoning the spellcaster, he needed to confirm that Xiao actually had 1 billion gold to back up his claim. As one might expect, Xiao understood. He offered to sign a contract to prove it, prompting the overseer to immediately whip out the papers. Xiao signed on the spot, and just like that, the deal was sealed. As promised, the divine-level spellcaster was summoned. Her name was Dolores, and just as Xiao had hoped, her level was so high that he couldn't even view her details. A complete mystery, except for one fact. For the next 24 hours, she would follow his every command and complete it. Dolores was confident because, from her perspective, this was nothing more than an easy payday. Whatever task this novice had for her, it would be simple. Surely he just wanted her to deal with some low-level dungeons near the novice village, right? But Xiao wasn't about to ruin the fun just yet. He decided to keep quiet about his actual plan. She would find out exactly which dungeon he wanted her to clear once he reached level 10. With that cleared up, they rushed straight to the Flower Plains and made quick work of the goblins that had been chasing him earlier. Just as the spellcaster had claimed, it was so easy for her that she didn't even break a sweat. If anything, she turned them into goblin barbecue just for fun. Thanks to that, Xiao easily shot up to level 10, earning himself 10 attribute points. But that wasn't all. The system rewarded him with another 10 points for being the first player on his local server to reach this level, plus a whopping 50 more for being the first worldwide. On top of that, he unlocked the Speed Ascender title, making his achievement even crazier. This was completely unexpected. After all, the highest level among other players wasn't even beyond 5. Naturally, the system made sure to announce his insane achievement to everyone. With someone officially hitting level 10, the level leaderboard was finally unlocked. As expected, players all over the game lost their minds. Some refused to believe it, thinking it had to be a game master running some kind of test. Meanwhile, others were already plotting ways to track him down, hoping to cling to his fame and ride the wave to boost themselves. But Xiao couldn't care less. He was just thrilled about the absurd amount of attribute points he had racked up in a single day. With that, he figured it was about time to head to their real destination, the dragon's lair. Meanwhile, a man clad in a white robe was working tirelessly, pushing himself harder than anyone else. Despite his relentless efforts, he was drenched in sweat and had only reached level 3. This was baffling, especially since someone else had already achieved level 10 the moment they logged in. The man in the white robe had been hunting elite monsters non-stop, barely pausing to catch his breath, yet his progress paled in comparison. It made no sense to him. He suspected some kind of exploit or trick was at play. But instead of feeling discouraged, he saw this mysterious player, Xiao, as his new rival, someone he was determined to surpass, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Xiao had already ventured into Whispering Valley, where the dragon's lair was hidden. Thanks to his prior knowledge, he had no trouble locating the magical rock required to reveal the entrance. As soon as he infused the rock with mana, the ground trembled violently before shattering apart, unveiling a massive entrance that emerged from below. Even the spellcaster accompanying him was stunned, not only by Xiao's familiarity with the lair, but also by the overwhelming aura radiating from within. It was clear that a powerful dragon resided there, and just sensing its presence from the entrance made her hesitate. Confronting such a creature alone was far beyond her comfort zone. Xiao understood her apprehension. Dragons were notoriously difficult to deal with, but that was precisely why he had come. He urged her to at least scout the area and assess the situation before making any decisions. Reluctantly, she agreed. As they ventured deeper into the lair, Xiao explained his motivation for exploring the cave. Years ago, a level 100 berserker had allegedly stumbled upon the lair by accident and claimed to have found a rare dragon egg inside. However, no one believed him, and when he ventured in alone, he never returned. Xiao had purchased battle footage of the berserker's expedition at a high price, which was how he knew about the egg. Unfortunately, this revelation only heightened the spellcaster's anxiety. Stealing a dragon egg wasn't just challenging, it was practically suicidal. The presence of an egg meant a dragon was undoubtedly nearby. Sure enough, their fears were confirmed. A massive dragon lay curled up atop a mountain of treasure, its scales glinting like polished metal in the dim light. The sheer amount of wealth beneath it was staggering. But the spellcaster didn't even consider taking a single coin knot with a tier 5 radiant dragon guarding it. This was a nightmare scenario. Even a tier 3 dragon could annihilate an entire guild. But a tier 5 dragon was among the most formidable creatures in existence. Their odds of survival were less than 1%. Yet for Xiao, the higher the stakes, the greater the rewards. He was undeterred, even exhilarated by the challenge. His determination to secure the dragon egg was unwavering. Unfortunately, the spellcaster didn't share his enthusiasm. No amount of money seemed worth the risk, until Xiao tripled his offer. At that point, she had a sudden change of heart. Xiao clarified that he wasn't asking her to kill the dragon, only to buy him enough time to steal the egg. Reluctantly, she agreed, but she made it clear that if they were going through with this, she would hold nothing back. As soon as they made their move, the spellcaster buffed their stats, doubling their capabilities in an instant. Without hesitation, she unleashed her most mana-consuming skill, summoning a storm of ice arrows that rained down on the dragon, piercing its thick scales. Seizing the opportunity, Xiao rushed toward the egg. However, the moment he touched it, he realized it was far heavier than anticipated. Moving, it was taking too much time, giving the dragon ample opportunity to notice their slow escape. Luckily, the spellcaster intervened, holding the dragon back with an ice wall while assisting Xiao with the egg. But their efforts were barely enough. The dragon began charging its king's breath, a devastating attack. Realizing the danger, they immediately buffed themselves with agility and bolted for the exit. Just as they crossed the cave's threshold, the connection between the entrance and the lair severed, preventing the dragon from pursuing them. They had successfully secured the egg. If their assumptions were correct, this wasn't just any dragon egg, it could hatch into a tier 5 dragon, making all of Xiao's expenses worthwhile. Speaking of expenses, the spellcaster didn't forget about her payment, and promptly reminded Xiao of their agreement. He assured her she would be paid in full, and to his surprise, her favorability toward him increased by 60 points. While this was unexpected, Xiao had more pressing matters to attend to. He needed to contract the beast. Placing his hand on the egg, he barely had a second to react before cracks spread across its surface. In an instant the egg hatched. However, what emerged was not what they had anticipated. The dragon inside looked entirely different from the radiant dragon they had just encountered. Its coloration was off, leaving them momentarily puzzled. Could it be some lesser kind of dragon? The moment they checked its stats, they realized just how wrong they had been. What stood before them was no ordinary creature. It was a mythical tier azure sky dragon with a base attribute of 500. This dragon wasn't just strong, it was supreme. As the highest-ranking dragon species, it held a 50% advantage over all other dragon types. It dealt 50% more damage while taking 50% less. Additionally, due to its mythical status, it inflicted an extra 30% damage to creatures below its tier, and received 30% less damage from them. But that wasn't even the most impressive part. This little dragon already possessed 3 active skills, far surpassing what other beasts started with. Naturally, Xiao was absolutely delighted. Without wasting any time, he decided to name the dragon. Given its color, he settled on Little Gray. Among everyone present, the toad felt the most relieved. Now that Xiao had a dragon, the toad wouldn't be mistaken for a pet anymore. He even voiced this thought aloud, which immediately drew Xiao's attention, not just to the toad, but to the badge it was holding. The toad had no intention of handing it over. After all, he had looted it from the dragon's nest entirely on his own. As far as he was concerned, it was a case of finders keepers. However, Xiao's curiosity got the better of him, and he took the badge anyway. The moment he did, the spellcaster, who clearly had far more experience, recognized it instantly. This wasn't just some random trinket, it was a calamity tier mark of ferocity, and its stats were as insane as its tier suggested. The bearer of this badge automatically triggered critical hits on every single skill. On top of that, it granted an additional +20 base crit chance and 100% crit damage. But the real game changer was its unique skill, Ferocious Massacre. This skill dealt 1000% of the user's mana as true damage and had an insanely high crit chance. The only thing preventing it from being completely broken was its 10-day cooldown. The toad immediately tried to snatch the badge back, but let's be honest, he didn't even need it. Considering he was the reason they had gotten caught in the first place, having tripped over a piece of armor, the emblem might as well count as compensation for his blunder. The toad couldn't argue with that logic, so Xiao equipped it without further resistance. The instant he did, a hidden questline was unlocked, requiring him to find the Fang of Ferocity. Just like before, the spellcaster knew exactly what that was, a god-tier assassin dagger forged from the fangs of an abyssal beast. This wasn't just any weapon, it was one of the most explosive high-damage weapons in existence. Naturally, Xiao was thrilled by the prospect, but there was one major problem. To obtain it, he had to travel to the Abyss continent. That was a long and arduous journey, one he didn't have time for just yet. Besides, the game was still in beta testing, and he had already hit the time limit. For now, he had no choice but to put his plans for the Abyss continent on hold and log out. Before doing so, he bid farewell to the Peachy sister, and finally took a well-earned break. The next day arrived, and the chaos surrounding the apocalypse had only worsened, and not in a good way. Players quickly realized just how brutal the leveling system was. No matter how hard they grinded, most of them barely scraped their way to level 2 after an entire day of non-stop effort, dying countless times in the process. Meanwhile, a guy named Ye Xiao had already reached level 10. Naturally, this fueled suspicions that he was cheating. But things took an even darker turn when some players began experiencing real-world physical symptoms after logging out. What started as exhaustion and dizziness quickly escalated to full-blown organ failure, landing several players in the hospital. In response, multiple nations moved to ban the game entirely. Xiao couldn't help but feel pity for them, knowing that when the game inevitably merged with reality, those banning it now would suffer the most. Before he could dwell on that thought, his phone rang. He picked it up and checked the voicemail. It was from Yanran, who had the audacity to order him to go to the hospital and pay the bills for her so-called friend Zhou Hong, who had fallen ill. Apparently, this was her idea of forgiving him for the stunt he had pulled the other day. The sheer entitlement made his blood boil. Not at her, but at himself, because he had forgotten to block her. Without wasting another second, he corrected that mistake. Meanwhile, Zhou Hong and Yanran truly believed Xiao would show up, thinking he still loved Yanran as he once had. But reality hit them hard when no Ye Xiao arrived. Instead, the doctor informed them that they were being discharged early. The hospital was overwhelmed with patients suffering from organ failure due to the apocalypse game. And since they weren't VIPs, they were asked to leave immediately and settle their bill. Evidently, they had no say in the matter. To Zhou Hong's surprise, Yanran didn't even have the monthly allowance Xiao usually gave her. This made him panic a little, as the bill was no small amount. He told Yanran to send Xiao another message, hoping to seduce him into coughing up some money. After all, Zhou Hong needed that cash. He was planning to start a game studio centered around the Apocalypse game. In other words, Zhou Hong was using Yanran as a pawn to get his hands on Xiao's money. Even though she was unwilling, she still did what he asked. She loved him too much, blindly following his every word, believing Zhou was the only one who truly understood her. In reality, it was the other way around. But her stupidity didn't excuse her from being manipulative, as she was still willing to exploit a man's genuine love for profit. Now, all they could do was wait for Xiao to show up and pay their bill. Unfortunately for them, Xiao didn't care anymore. He was simply enjoying his well-timed rest. As soon as the timer was up and he could play again, he got up without hesitation and entered the game. To his surprise, despite the bad publicity and the countless players getting injured in real life, the number of players had skyrocketed. However, because of his high level, he immediately stood out inside the city. A bunch of players desperately tried to cling to him, hoping to squeeze out the secret behind his rapid progression. This prompted Xiao to get the hell out of there, escaping the delusional horde of players chasing after him. Thanks to his extraordinary stats, Xiao effortlessly outran the persistent newbies who had been trailing him. He slipped into a zone designated for level 10 players, a place where only seasoned adventurers could survive. This move finally deterred the inexperienced players, who stayed in their lane and stopped following him. Relieved, Xiao took a moment to breathe before continuing his journey. Shortly after, he arrived at the trial grounds, where a stoic knight stood guard. Without hesitation, Xiao requested to begin the trial. However, the guard, aware of the challenge's difficulty, immediately questioned the absence of his team. Xiao casually revealed that he intended to tackle the trial solo, a decision the guard found reckless, if not outright ridiculous. Nevertheless, the guard chose not to intervene, as it was not his responsibility to stop him. With that, Xiao confidently stepped into the center of the trial circle, ready to begin. Before the trial could commence, Xiao was presented with 5 difficulty options, ranging from normal to abyss. Without a moment's hesitation, he selected the hardest difficulty, abyss. This choice caused the usually composed guard, who had undoubtedly witnessed countless foolish decisions in his time, to visibly flinch. Even by reckless standards, this decision seemed beyond foolish. Xiao, however, remained calm and composed. Having played similar games before, he knew exactly what to expect from the trial. More importantly, he was confident that his god-tier pet, the Green Dragon, would be more than capable of handling the challenge. As predicted, a level 10 savage snow wolf appeared, boasting an intimidating 5,000 health. However, this was no match for Xiao's pet. With a single dragon's breath, Greenie reduced the wolf's health by half. A few more melee strikes followed, and it became clear that the fight was as good as over. Just when victory seemed inevitable, the wolf unleashed its trump card, going berserk in a desperate last-ditch attempt to turn the tide. Unfortunately for the wolf, Greenie was not about to let that happen. With a powerful dragon's roar, the pet stunned the wolf, leaving it vulnerable to a final decisive strike. In an instant, the wolf collapsed, defeated. With the victory, Greenie gained a massive chunk of experience, instantly leveling up to level 4. Xiao was thrilled by this development, as each level up granted an additional 50 points to all stats. To make things even better, Greenie unlocked a new skill called Dragon Fangs, an ability that silenced magic from the 2 nearest enemies for 5 seconds, an incredibly useful effect in battle. The rewards didn't end there. The defeated wolf dropped valuable loot, a wolf bow and a dagger, both dark gold items. This was an extraordinary find, far superior to anything Xiao had obtained in his past life. It seemed his luck was significantly influencing the quality of the drops. However, Xiao's moment of celebration was short-lived. Another mutant beast emerged, this time a level 10 abyssal tiger. Stronger than the wolf by a considerable margin, the tiger boasted 8,000 health and the added threat of being a demonized beast. Undeterred, Xiao and Greenie dove straight into the fight. This time, however, the battle was not as easy as the previous one. The battle had dragged on for a grueling half an hour, and by the end of it, their legs felt as though they were on the verge of giving out. Despite the exhaustion, the struggle had been worth it. The rewards they secured more than compensated for the effort, as they managed to acquire 2 more dark gold items, a sword and a shield. Naturally, the Toad was already contemplating a return to town to sell their newly acquired loot. However, Xiao had other plans. There was still one more challenge ahead, the trial boss. He had no intention of leaving without defeating it. As one might expect, the Toad immediately questioned Xiao's sanity. While they had successfully taken down numerous monsters, a boss was an entirely different matter. Greenie, Xiao's pet, was only level 7, and the Toad seriously doubted its ability to handle such a formidable opponent. Xiao, however, harbored no such doubts. Not even a little. He had complete faith in Greeny's abilities. In his past life, the final boss of the Abyss trial had been a Lord-tier beast. Given that Greeny had already defeated 2 demonized monsters without breaking a sweat, Xiao was confident this challenge would be no different. With unwavering confidence, Xiao stepped into the Abyss, assuring the Toad that he would clear the trial effortlessly. The Toad, however, remained skeptical, especially as system notifications continuously popped up, warning them to leave. These warnings did little to ease the Toad's nerves, but there was nothing he could do to dissuade Xiao. Xiao was determined to complete the trial. If he wanted to rise to the top, hesitation was not an option. He fully embraced the Abyss, and the Abyss, in turn, seemed to acknowledge his presence. Emerging from the shadows was their final opponent, the Abyss Wanderer. It was far more formidable than Xiao had anticipated. This was no mere Lord-tier boss. It was King-tier, boasting 5,000 spirit points. A pure magic-based class, the Abyss Wanderer had one significant handicap: 0 strength and 0 agility. This made it ridiculously slow. However, if even a single one of its attacks landed, Xiao would be finished. Despite the danger, Xiao saw an opportunity in this information and immediately put it to his advantage. He commanded Greeny to attack using only fire breath while constantly repositioning. If the boss was too slow to react, they could whittle down its health from a safe distance. As Xiao had predicted, the Abyss Wanderer was painfully slow. It barely reacted, standing motionless like an ancient statue as Greeny relentlessly torched it. The assault continued without much trouble, but then, without warning, the boss shifted its focus entirely onto Xiao. Raising its staff high, it unleashed an endless barrage of magical strikes. The situation grew increasingly tense, but Xiao's overall stats allowed him to dodge each attack by the narrowest of margins. This was enough, as the boss's focus on Xiao gave Greeny a free opening. Seizing the opportunity, Greeny intensified its fire breath, going full auto and rapidly depleting the Wanderer's health. The battle became a test of endurance. Whoever tired out first would determine the winner. Fortunately, the Abyss Wanderer was the first to fall, just moments before Xiao's stamina ran out. It had been an alarmingly close call. So close, in fact, that the Toad immediately declared that if Xiao ever planned to attempt something so reckless again, he should count him out. However, pushing through such difficulty came with its rewards. Greeny leveled up to 10, and as the first player to complete the trial, Xiao received a +5 boost to all his attributes. Additionally, there were the spoils from defeating a King-tier boss. Meanwhile, the system took its time to announce Xiao's accomplishment. As the first player to complete an Abyss trial, he was awarded the legendary title, Abyss Emissary. This announcement instantly captured the attention of every player. It was the second time Ye Xiao's name had appeared on the leaderboard, further fueling curiosity about his identity. Some players even began investigating him, and it didn't take long for them to discover that he was from the Jiangcheng area. This revelation prompted a group to send someone to investigate him, not only to recruit him, but also to uncover his secrets. At the same time, Zhou Hong had finally logged into the game with Yanran. Both of them saw the announcement. Noticing that this player hailed from the same newbie village as them, Zhou Hong began contemplating the idea of teaming up with him. If they could pull it off, they might end up even wealthier than Ye Xiao himself. As usual, Yanran, who knew little about the game's mechanics, was skeptical. How could a game possibly generate such significant profit? Zhou Hong, however, assured her that it was possible. Still, he thought it wouldn't hurt to ask Ye Xiao for a little financial boost to get them started. Yanran, though, had already heard enough about Ye Xiao for one day, and had no patience for further discussion. It was rare for her and Zhou Hong to have time alone together. Since she had never played a game before, she eagerly urged him to start teaching her. With that, they decided to focus on leveling up first. Meanwhile, Ye Xiao looted the boss, only to find a fragment. It was hardly the reward he had hoped for, but something from an abyss couldn't be useless, especially from a boss. Moreover, he had never seen such an item in his previous life, so its importance had to be greater than it appeared. It seemed like he should appraise it when he got the chance. For now, however, leaving the beginner's village and heading to the main city was far more important. With that in mind, he left the trial, surprising the knight guarding the place. Zhao, however, didn't have time to listen to the man's praises, so he simply ordered him to connect him to the main city. Since he had cleared the trial, he was granted permission, and a portal was opened for him right then and there. Before he stepped through, the guard handed him a guide token, allowing him to freely enter or leave the main city whenever he wanted. Additionally, because he had cleared an abyss-level trial, he was also entitled to an epic item, the Badge of Valor. proof that he had conquered an Inferno Abyss rank dungeon. With the added enhancements, his excitement skyrocketed. With this, he stepped into the main city in high spirits, ready for whatever lay ahead. However, since he was the first one to enter this place, it was much quieter compared to his previous life. Back then, the area had been packed with over 100 players, but now it felt like a ghost town. Still, that worked in his favor. At least no clueless newbies would come pestering him. Peacefully, he proceeded with his plan to find Beastmaster Goodle. As one might guess, this made the Toad question him. After all, Xiao was already a beast tamer, so why would he need to see another one? Xiao simply laughed, knowing the answer would become clear soon enough. A little while later, he found Goodle sitting outside a building. As soon as Xiao approached, the old man dismissed him outright, clearly not wanting to be bothered. His expression alone made it obvious that he thought Xiao was just another clueless beginner. Yet, the instant Xiao mentioned wanting to transfer to the hidden class, Beast Whisperer, Goodle's expression twisted, not in shock, but in fury, as if he had just been insulted. He clearly thought Xiao was underestimating the Beast Tamer profession, as if anyone could just walk up and ask to become a Beast Whisperer. If that was what Xiao thought, then he was greatly mistaken. To even qualify, Goodle demanded that Xiao go to the outskirts and bring back 100 demon wolf eyes, a test designed to weed out the unworthy. However, there was no way Xiao was wasting his time slaughtering 100 elite monsters just to prove himself. He had something much better to offer the old man, and no, it wasn't money this time. Instead, he pulled out the badge of valor, and that was all it took. The instant Goodle laid eyes on the badge, his entire demeanor shifted. One moment, he was lounging in his chair, indifferent and dismissive. The next, he was on his feet, eyes wide in disbelief. Clearing an Inferno Abyss trial this early was already shocking. But doing it solo? That was unheard of. Just like that, the old man turned into his biggest fan, showering Xiao with praise and going on about how he had sensed his greatness from the moment he saw him. Xiao, however, wasn't about to let that slide. He immediately called out Goodle's hypocrisy, reminding him how he had just called him useless a moment ago. This had Goodle sweating bullets, though he still tried to play it cool. What was done was done. He could only act polite now to make up for it. Before granting the job change, however, Goodle had one more request. He wanted to see Xiao's beast. He was clearly curious about how Xiao had managed to clear the trial alone. The second Greenie appeared, the answer became obvious. A god-tier beast like this? No wonder Xiao had crushed an Inferno Abyss trial on his own. Now, the old man regarded Xiao with a bit more respect, given that even he had never expected to witness a god-tier beast firsthand. However, he had some bad news for Xiao. He likely wouldn't be able to transfer to the Beast Whisperer class. A class like that simply wasn't worthy of a god-tier beast. Instead, Goodle decided to introduce Xiao to the Royal Chief Beast Tamer. Confident that this man would have the answers Xiao was looking for, he handed him a referral letter along with an address. With this, Xiao was thrilled by how things were turning out. However, there was a slight problem. The Royal Chief Beast Tamer resided in the Royal City, a place nowhere near his current location. Besides, Xiao had other things to take care of first, so he turned his focus on completing another hidden quest. Making a little detour, he headed toward a lady surrounded by guards. This was Lady Shirley, the widow of the former city lord, a wealthy and stunning woman. Xiao, however, wasn't there for romance. He was there for the hidden quest. Making his way over, he showed the proper respect and spoke the lines that would trigger the quest, commenting on how sorrowful she looked. With that, Lady Shirley explained that she had lost a personal item, and if Xiao could retrieve it, she would be deeply grateful. This immediately activated the hidden quest, tasking him with finding a beautiful flower. Obviously, this left the Toad completely stunned, making him wonder just how Xiao even knew about such an obscure hidden quest in the first place. Xiao ignored the Toad and continued his quest for the flower, wandering around town. His actions only deepened the Toad's confusion. After all, shouldn't a flower be found in a garden or somewhere outside the city? Thankfully, that question was soon answered, when Xiao explained that this wasn't just any ordinary flower. It wasn't something that could be found growing in the wild. Instead, it could only be obtained from a special place, the tool shop. At first, the Toad thought Xiao was joking, but Xiao had no time for jokes. He walked straight into the shop and purchased a special item called a treasure box. Not just any treasure box, but the most expensive one, costing 10,000 gold each. Xiao knew that buying only one box wouldn't be enough. He needed all of them. As expected, the items he received from the boxes were mostly useless, things he would never need in the first place. Half an hour later, after opening box after box, there was still no sign of the beautiful flower. only one box remained. Despite this, Xiao never lost hope. Based on his past life experience, he knew the flower was guaranteed to appear as long as he bought every last treasure box. Sure enough, when he opened the final one, there it was, the beautiful flower. However, its description wasn't nearly as impressive as its appearance. If Xiao hadn't already known its true purpose, he might have thought it was just another useless item like all the others. Meanwhile, Lady Shirley was enjoying her morning bath, idly wondering if anyone would ever find her precious flower. Just then, one of her maids burst into the room, barely catching her breath as she reported that a man had arrived carrying the very flower Lady Shirley had been seeking. The news hit her so hard that for a moment, she completely forgot she was still in the bath. Thankfully, her maid had the sense to remind her. As soon as Lady Shirley got dressed, she wasted no time marching straight to meet the man, eager to see if he was bluffing. To her surprise, he really did have the treasure she had been searching for all this time. After years of fruitless searching, she couldn't believe someone had actually found it. Overcome with gratitude, she offered him anything he desired. Money, rare artifacts, whatever he wanted. But Xiao shut that down immediately. He wasn't interested in any of it. To Lady Shirley, his refusal could only mean one thing. Still, she wasn't the type to go back on her word. After promising to give him everything, she concluded that the only thing left to offer was herself. It was a tempting offer, but Xiao was a man of focus. He already had something else in mind, and it definitely wasn't pursuing a romantic encounter. Instead, he had a much more practical request: citizenship status. Naturally, this delighted Lady Shirley. Her previous offer had been a test, and the fact that he didn't jump at the chance only raised her favorability toward him. Since granting citizenship to a player was an easy task for someone of her status, she immediately made the arrangements. It was then that Xiao brought up a related request. He wanted to purchase property in Windleaf City and settle down there. Lady Shirley had no issue with this, as it was naturally tied to his new citizenship. However, what puzzled her was his specific choice of location: the West District, a place that wasn't exactly thriving. Assuming he didn't know any better, she warned him about the disadvantages of the area. But Xiao wasn't clueless, far from it. He already knew about the West District's current state and had a personal reason for wanting that land. Understanding this, Lady Shirley chose not to pry any further. The toad, however, was another story. As a business counselor, he was completely against the decision. He believed buying property in a more prosperous district would benefit them far more. But Xiao just laughed. Unlike most people, he knew what the future held. Soon, Windleaf City would come under attack by strange creatures. The battle would be devastating, so much so that even the current city lord would fall. The East District, one of the most developed areas, would be hit the hardest, suffering massive destruction. In contrast, the West District, being sparsely populated, would attract fewer monsters and take minimal damage. After the dust settled, it would end up becoming the most functional and valuable part of Windleaf City. Xiao intended to claim it before anyone else realized what was coming. With the assistance of the Lady Shirley, Xiao was able to leverage her connections to secure a significant deal. Through her influence, he acquired 340 residential units and 184 commercial units, all for a total of 1.2 billion gold coins. Given Xiao's immense wealth, the price caught him off guard. Not because it was expensive, but because it was astonishingly cheap for the number of units he obtained. It felt like daylight robbery to him. Without hesitation, Xiao opted to pay the entire sum up front, bypassing any payment plans or installments. Once the transaction was complete, Shirley handed Xiao his citizenship documents. To his surprise, they were not for Windleaf City, but rather a first-class citizenship of the Dragon Phoenix Empire. Even the Toad, who was usually quick with words, was left speechless. First-class citizenship in the Empire was something even powerful warlords struggled to attain. Yet Xiao held it in his hands as if it were a trivial giveaway. This revelation led him to one conclusion. Shirley was not merely well-connected. She had royal blood. Indeed, Shirley confirmed her royal lineage, which explained her noble demeanor and effortless grace. Xiao finally understood why she carried herself with such poise. Rather than feeling intimidated, he saw this as an opportunity. Without wasting any time, he inquired if she knew the royal beast Tamer. As it turned out, the royal beast Tamer was her uncle, which worked perfectly for Xiao, as he had an important matter to discuss with him regarding his mission. Fortunately for Xiao, Shirley seemed to have taken a liking to him. Not only was she willing to contact her uncle on his behalf, but she also began showing clear favoritism. Xiao, ever the opportunist, quickly capitalized on the situation. In a smooth move, He took her hand and placed a light kiss on it, causing her royal cheeks to blush. Soon after, she insisted that he call her by her first name, Sophia, a clear indication of her growing fondness for him. However, Xiao was a busy man and had no time to be sidetracked by romantic pursuits, no matter how tempting they might be. After securing his business dealings, he went his separate way. Meanwhile, his achievements were broadcasted to all players, cementing his status as the first to obtain first-class citizenship in the Dragon Phoenix Empire. This accomplishment unlocked the prestige ranking system. Additionally, as the first player to acquire real estate, he triggered the activation of the regional housing system. These feats alone were impressive, but the system further rewarded him by leveling him up to level 11 and increasing his daily game time limit by an extra hour. This development left other players utterly stunned. An extra hour of game time was a massive advantage, and it highlighted just how realistic and immersive the game could be. For many players, it was a harsh reminder of their struggles. While they were already nobodies in real life, they now had to contend with the fact that some players, like Xiao, were far ahead in status within the game as well. It was a classic case of the rich getting richer, while others struggled to make ends meet. The developers' intentions remained a mystery, as no one actually knew who they were. Meanwhile, news of Xiao's extraordinary achievements reached Zhou Hong and Yanran. However, their reaction was far from celebratory. The name Knight Xiao made them skeptical, though they reasoned that Xiao was a common name, and likely not the person they knew. After all, the Xiao they were familiar with wasn't the type to play such games. Still, they couldn't help but wonder how different their situation might be if they had a top player like Knight Xiao leading them. Perhaps they would already be level 5 instead of struggling to defeat a single monster. This thought, predictably, irritated their current teammates, especially when Yanran openly complained about their lack of progress, despite contributing little herself. Her audacity sparked immediate tension within the group. Zhou Hong quickly stepped in to smooth things over, apologizing on Yanran's behalf. However, Yanran, who often acted as though everyone owed her something, refused to back down. Instead, she became even more enraged and stormed off. Her teammates didn't let her leave without calling her out, pointing out that her looks didn't give her the right to act like a spoiled princess. With Yanran gone, Zhou Hong was left frustrated. How were they supposed to level up with just the two of them? Yanran, however, shot back at him, accusing the group of insulting her and completely ignoring her own role in causing the conflict. She also criticized Zhou Hong for not defending her, further escalating the tension. Not wanting to waste time on unnecessary drama, Zhou Hong apologized and changed the subject. He suggested they try contacting the pro player Knight Xiao to team up with them. Initially, Yanran was vehemently against the idea, but after persistent pleading from Zhou Hong, she reluctantly agreed. However, as it was getting late, she decided to deal with the matter another time. Later, after logging off, Zhou Hong felt relieved that she had gone along with the plan. The two exchanged their goodbyes and quickly logged out of the game. However, before Yanran went to sleep, she decided to contact Ye Xiao one more time. She was still convinced that he was merely playing hard to get. In her message, she mentioned that they were playing Apocalypse and invited him to join them, hoping he could help her and Zhou Hong level up. As usual, she added a little incentive, suggesting that if he could get her onto the rankings, she might even consider being his girlfriend. In her mind, this was an incredibly generous offer. 5 minutes passed, and there was still no reply from Ye Xiao, which struck her as odd. Growing curious, she checked the message again, only to discover that he had deleted her from his friend list. Instantly, irritation flared up, and she began cursing him out loud, swearing that she would never forgive him, not even if he knelt and begged. Of course, it was highly unlikely that Ye Xiao would ever do something like that. Meanwhile, Ye Xiao was focused on his own business, immersed in the game. He was making his way to a premium appraisal shop that exclusively handled silver-grade items or higher. It was the perfect place to have his dark gold items evaluated. However, the moment he presented his items, the attendant's eyes widened in surprise. It was rare for anyone to bring in such high-tier items. The attendant quickly explained that the shop owner was the only one who could guarantee a successful appraisal of dark gold items. And unfortunately, the owner wasn't available at the moment. Ye Xiao immediately saw through the act, recognizing it as a classic sales tactic. Uninterested in playing along, he cut the attendant off, demanding that he drop the nonsense and get to the point. Reluctantly, the attendant revealed that he was a gold-tier appraiser himself, boasting an 80% success rate. However, for dark gold items, he would need 100 gold coins per item to ensure a perfect appraisal. Ye Xiao knew this was an inflated price, as the actual cost was likely half that amount. But to him, 100 gold coins were trivial. His time was far more valuable, so without hesitation, he dropped the money on the counter and instructed the attendant to begin. He also mentioned that he had several more items lined up for appraisal. As soon as the attendant saw the sheer number of high-tier items Ye Xiao possessed, he realized he was dealing with someone extremely wealthy. There was no room for delays or excuses. Without another word, he got to work. The very first item he appraised already had insane attributes, but what shocked him even more was Ye Xiao's reaction. The man stood there completely unfazed, as if he had seen better. Realizing that stalling or hyping up the process wouldn't impress his customer, the attendant swallowed his surprise and continued the appraisals as quickly as possible. A few moments later, Xiao stepped out of the store with a smirk, feeling exceptionally pleased with himself. Every piece of equipment he had appraised turned out to be top tier, and he had even equipped some of it, significantly boosting his overall attributes. Even the toad had to admit that Xiao was now strong enough to stand on his own, without relying entirely on his beast. However, Xiao wasn't done upgrading himself just yet. He needed more power, and since Sophia still hadn't brought any news about her uncle's thoughts, he decided to head straight to Grey Mist Valley to level up. As soon as Xiao set foot in Grey Mist Valley, the toad shivered. The place wasn't just ominous, it looked like a death trap. The monsters lurking there were already at level 20, more than enough to send most players running in the opposite direction. To make matters worse, the monsters didn't come one at a time, but in groups. Despite this, Xiao remained unfazed, confident that he could take them on, even if they were over-leveled. Just as he had expected, Greenie alone was enough to handle them, burning through the packs with nothing but its fire breath, and killing them in a single hit. Each kill racked up 240 experience points. And the best part was that these high-level monsters automatically charged at them, meaning Xiao didn't even need to do much. He simply kicked back and let Greenie handle the horde of hyenas. Sure enough, the monsters kept rushing in, only to be wiped out instantly. With this setup, 2 hours flew by, and just like that, Xiao had leveled up to 12. Even Greenie leveled up alongside him. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than a few days to hit level 20. As Xiao walked over to the pile of monster corpses, something caught his eye, an item drop. Picking it up, he was surprised to see it was a fireball technique. Even though he was a beastmaster, having extra skills could only make him stronger, so he wasted no time and used it immediately. As soon as the skill integrated with him, Xiao quickly fired off a shot at the nearest beast he could find. However, as expected, his class compatibility wasn't ideal. Even with his high stats, the damage was underwhelming to say the least, which made the toad burst out laughing. Finally, the toad felt vindicated. Learning Fireball had indeed been a waste, at least in its current state. But Xiao knew better. Even if the skill was weak now, once he leveled up its proficiency, the destructive power would become insane. When that happened, the toad would be the one left speechless. However, that would have to wait. Xiao's trial period had ended, meaning he was about to be forcefully logged out. With that, the third day of the beta test came to a close. But now, the real game was about to begin. Everyone would be dragged into this insanely dangerous world, whether they were ready or not. A few hours later, the event Xiao had been waiting for finally happened. The world began to merge with the game. Dark clouds formed overhead, and lightning crashed down, splitting the sky apart. As the strikes descended, system interfaces started popping up in front of everyone, including those who had never even touched the game before. Before they could even process what was happening, they were dragged straight into the game known as Apocalypse. It didn't matter what they had been doing, whether they were taking a bath, partying, or just minding their own business. No one was spared. Even Yanran and Zhou Hong were transported. Unlike the others, Zhou Hong didn't panic. If anything, he saw this as a golden opportunity. His instincts had been right all along. This game wasn't just some virtual playground. It was a path to real wealth. Being part of the beta test put him ahead of those who had never played before. But even then, his mind wasn't just on leveling up. He was still thinking about Ye Xiao's money. So naturally, he turned to Yanran, hoping she might have some answers. However, this only pissed her off. After all, Ye Xiao had been ignoring her for days. But she didn't need him anyway. She had a better plan. If Ye Xiao wouldn't acknowledge her, then she would just contact Master Night Xiao instead. She didn't know him personally yet, but with her looks, she was certain no man could resist her charm. She was confident they'd be able to recruit Master Night Xiao into their party. However, not everyone was as optimistic as them. For most players, this was a nightmare. There was no option to log out, no way to escape, and worst of all, player locations were linked to their real-world locations. That meant some poor souls got dropped straight into monster-infested zones with no choice but to fight for their lives. And if they died, it was permanent. As this terrifying reality sank in, players started moving with caution, sticking together whenever possible. But even as fear spread, another question kept popping up in their minds. Who had transported them here? And more importantly, did Ye Xiao know how to quit the game? Really, who could blame them for wondering? Among all the beta testers, Ye Xiao was the only one who had skyrocketed in level so fast, leaving everyone else in the dust. If anyone knew the secrets of this world, it had to be him. Some even started whispering that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't just a player. Perhaps he was one of the developers. With that rumor spreading like wildfire, everyone wanted to find Ye Xiao. Even the top guild leader was desperate to track him down. But that was easier said than done. Ye Xiao was already level 12, and with the risk of permanent death looming over them, no one was willing to step into the higher level zones where he was currently grinding. There was no way he'd still be lurking around Novice Village either. Moreover, the highest level members of the guild were only level 4, which meant catching up to Ye Xiao was going to be damn near impossible unless they started leveling up fast. And so, the race to catch up to Ye Xiao had begun. Around that time, Ye Xiao received a message from Lady Sophia, summoning him to the Duke's mansion. She had news regarding what he had been investigating. Thrilled that details about the royal beast Tamer had come so quickly, Ye Xiao set off for the mansion without delay. As he entered the mansion, he was momentarily stunned by Lady Sophia's revealing outfit. Blushing with embarrassment, he thought she looked incredibly seductive. Who could resist that? Quickly changing the subject, he asked if there was any news about the royal beast Tamer. Lady Sophia explained that her uncle, Steer, was currently traveling and couldn't return just yet. Disappointed, Ye Xiao felt his hopes sink. However, Lady Sophia continued, saying that her uncle had asked her to inform Ye Xiao about how to unlock the hidden class. Surprisingly, it was located right there in Windleaf City. Ye Xiao's eyes lit up. He had assumed he would have to travel to the ends of the earth, only to discover the treasure was practically in his own backyard. He pressed Lady Sophia for details, and she hesitantly told him that, according to her uncle Steer, a very powerful dragon resided at the top of Dragon Ridge, just outside the city. Beneath that dragon's lair lay a labyrinth. Ye Xiao, recalling his past life knowledge, asked if she meant the cave maze. Startled, Lady Sophia wanted to know how he knew its name. Ye Xiao sidestepped the question, claiming he had heard of it before. In his previous life, he had grinded the cave maze extensively, facing only a level 80 demonized boss. No dragon. He wondered if something had changed this time. Lady Sophia confirmed that her uncle insisted a dragon guarded that area. Without hesitation, Ye Xiao decided to check it out immediately. Alarmed, Lady Sophia reminded him that he was only level 12 and that adventurers far stronger than him had never returned alive from a level 80 zone. He assured her that he had his methods. Toad grinned, chiming in that Ye Xiao had once stolen a dragon egg, so a mere labyrinth was nothing. Give him enough money, and he'd even take down a dragon. Dealing with dragons was apparently Ye Xiao's specialty. Retrieving his Supreme Hall token, Ye Xiao summoned Dolores. Lady Sophia was stunned. How could a level 12 player possess a Supreme Hall token? Dolores appeared and asked why Ye Xiao had called Big Sis this time. Ye Xiao explained that he had a big job for her. Surprised, Dolores asked if this was another dragon-related mission. When Ye Xiao nodded, Dolores couldn't help but ask if he had some grudge against dragons. After all, he'd nearly broken her back last time while stealing that dragon egg. Dolores initially refused, telling him to hire someone else. Ye Xiao then offered her the same payment as before, 2 billion gold coins. Though tempted, Dolores still declined, explaining that she was injured and needed recovery time. She could accompany him in a month, once healed. In response, Ye Xiao mentioned knowing the location of the Holy Spirit Spring, which could speed up her recovery. Shocked, Dolores demanded to know if he was serious. If he truly knew where it was, she would go with him even if it killed her. Ye Xiao confirmed it was in the Lost Lands, and they struck a deal. Watching from a distance, Lady Sophia thought Ye Xiao was beyond anything she could have imagined. She couldn't help but anticipate his future growth, perhaps even to the level of a god-tier powerhouse. Meanwhile, outside the beginner village, many players gathered around a man named Wang Qiang, who had just been slashed twice by a goblin. After respawning, his organs began failing. Panic spread as people realized the game could truly kill them. Everyone wanted to go home, but nobody knew how to log out. Suddenly, someone mentioned hearing about a player who had already reached level 12. Maybe they should find him and ask for help. On the other side of the world, Ye Xiao and his group reached Dragon Ridge, where the Holy Spirit Spring was rumored to be. Toad, admiring the area's beauty, remarked that it hardly seemed like a dragon's hiding place. Dolores cautioned him that the more peaceful a place looked, the deadlier the danger lurking there. Ye Xiao agreed, pointing out that the monsters here were level 80. Without Dolores's level suppression buff, they would already be surrounded. Since they were heading for the labyrinth, it was best to avoid unnecessary battles. Suddenly, they noticed a huge dragon circling atop the mountain. Dolores nervously asked if Ye Xiao really knew where the labyrinth entrance was, noting that the dragon above was tier 5. She did not want to be spotted. Ye Xiao told her to relax, insisting that the dragon wouldn't see them. He led them to a steep slope on the mountainside, where a massive stone gate stood, adorned with a mysterious magic pattern. Examining the magical array, Dolores remarked on its sophistication. She saw no lingering magic residue, and doubted she could open it. Ye Xiao reassured her, drew a knife, cut his hand, and let a few drops of blood fall onto the teleportation array. Startled, Dolores asked how he knew how to activate it. Ye Xiao only smiled in response. That's it for today. If you watched till the end, comment Dragon Tamer below to let me know you're excited for the next part. By the way, this is an ongoing manhwa, and only 13 episodes have been released so far. Today, I covered up to episode 11. Stay tuned for more.